Nolan Drew didn't expect to meet the most stunning woman he'd ever seen. While carrying 6 grocery bags up 3 flights of stairs with his 5-year-old daughter clinging to his hand and a juice box dangling from her lips. "Daddy, she dropped her bag," Hallie whispered, tugging at his jacket. Nolan followed Hallie's gaze to the woman standing frozen near the stairwell landing. One of her designer tote bags had toppled over, spilling out what looked like 3 folders, a laptop, and a pair of red-bottomed heels. She was clearly out of breath. And clearly out of place in their run-down building. "I got it," Nolan said quickly, setting down his bags. "Hallie, hold on tight to the railing." He jogged up the last few steps and scooped the fallen items back into the bag, handing it to the woman with a casual smile. "You all right?" She looked at him with wide green eyes, sharp, watchful, beautiful. "Yes, thank you." Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. She was dressed in a fitted blazer and pencil skirt, heels in hand, her long chestnut hair messy from the wind. He figured she was maybe lost or visiting someone. No one dressed like that lived here. "You sure you're in the right place?" he asked gently. "This building's got more leaks than lights." "I just moved into 3C, she said, lifting her chin. "Elevator's broken." Nolan blinked. "You're my neighbor." She looked surprised. "You live here, right across the hall," he said, gesturing to the opposite unit. "I'm Nolan, this is Hallie." Hallie gave a shy wave. "Hi, your bag is pretty." The woman cracked a smile. "Thanks, sweetie, I'm Wren." "Wren Lancaster. Need help with the rest of your stuff?" Nolan offered, already picking up another of her bags before she could answer. Wren looked like she wanted to say no, but her arms were shaking and her expression softened watching Hallie skip ahead. "Okay," she said finally. "Thanks." They made their way to her door. Wren fumbled with the keys, clearly flustered, and Nolan noticed she was trying not to breathe in the scent of paint and mold. He didn't blame her. "Place looks rough now," he said, guessing her thoughts, "but once you patch it up, it's not so bad." "Quiet neighbors, mostly." She unlocked the door. "I don't plan to stay long," Nolan nodded. "Well, if you need anything, I'm just across the hall. I cook a lot, and Hallie likes baking cookies she won't eat." Hallie grinned. "I just like the dough." Wren laughed, and Nolan noticed how much warmer she looked when she smiled, softer, less guarded. That night, after Hallie fell asleep with chocolate on her chin and a book half open on her chest, Nolan stood by the window watching the city lights flicker over old rooftops and wondered what someone like Wren Lancaster was doing in a building like theirs. He didn't know she was a CEO. And Wren didn't plan on telling him either. Wren had moved into the crumbling apartment under an alias in the lease, hoping to escape the pressure cooker her life had become. After back-to-back betrayals from her CFO and ex-fiancé, who, as it turned out, was the same man she'd needed 3 things: space, anonymity, and time to figure out what the hell she wanted next. She didn't expect to find a man like Nolan here. The next morning, she ran into him again in the hallway. Hallie was in mismatched socks and pigtails, holding a paper plate of cookies. "They're for you," she told Wren. "Daddy made them." Wren took a cookie, amused. "What's in them?" "Too much cinnamon," Nolan said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Hallie's in a phase." "Cinnamon is the best part," Hallie declared. Wren bit into one and laughed. "She's right." From then on, mornings were different. Nolan would nod to her as she left for her temp job, and Hallie would run up to her with a new drawing almost daily. Wren found herself looking forward to those moments, those brief, sweet glimpses of something normal, something warm. One evening, Wren came home late, heels in hand, exhausted. Her phone had 20 missed calls from her assistant. She ignored them and climbed the stairs slowly, only to find Nolan waiting in the hall with a plate of pasta in hand. "You look like you haven't eaten since last week," he said, offering it without ceremony. Wren blinked at him. "You made this." "I cook." "It's my thing," he said with a shrug. "Plus, Hallie says I'm not allowed to make dinner without sharing any more." Wren took the plate and leaned against the doorframe. "You do this for everyone." "No, just you," he said simply. Her heart skipped. A week later, a storm knocked out half the building's power. Wren's fridge died. She knocked on Nolan's door, frustrated, holding a tray of salad and a half-frozen pie. "Can I borrow your freezer?" Nolan opened the door and grinned. "Only if you stay for dinner." She hesitated. "I don't want to intrude. You'd be doing me a favor." Hallie made spaghetti. It's aggressive. Wren laughed and stepped inside. That night, she sat at Nolan's tiny kitchen table, listening to Hallie sing made-up songs about noodles, watching Nolan laugh like he hadn't been broken before. She felt safer than she had in months. She didn't want to leave. After Hallie went to bed, Wren helped Nolan clean up. He handed her a glass of wine he'd been saving and turned on some music low, just enough to fill the quiet. "Why'd you move here, really?" he asked gently. She hesitated, eyes on the glass. "I needed a break." "From everything? Anyone hurt you?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "More than I thought they could." He looked at her for a long moment. "Then they were idiots." She met his gaze. His eyes were warm, steady, and suddenly she wasn't tired anymore. "You're a good dad, Nolan," she said quietly. He looked surprised. "I'm trying, I just want her to feel safe, loved." "She does," Wren said, "and so do I." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Nolan froze. "Wren, I know," she whispered. "I'm sorry, that was." He stepped closer. "No, don't be," and then he kissed her. Soft, sure. Like he'd been waiting for her to feel safe enough to kiss back. She did. And everything changed. The next morning, Wren left early before Hallie woke up, her heart racing in ways she hadn't felt in years. But as she walked into the glass tower that held Lancaster and Co., greeted by her assistant and 3 board members she had no patience for, the weight of her 2 lives hit her hard. Nolan didn't know she owned the company he thought she was temping at, didn't know she was worth millions. Or that the man who'd betrayed her was about to file a lawsuit against her for control. He just saw her. The woman with messy hair and tired eyes who liked cinnamon cookies and danced in kitchens, and somehow, she didn't want to lose that, but secrets never stayed buried forever. 3 days passed without Wren knocking on Nolan's door again. Not that he was counting. He told himself it didn't mean anything, that she was probably busy or tired or needed space. But every time he heard footsteps in the hallway, he hoped it was her. Every time Hallie asked if Wren was coming over for dinner again, he gave the same soft, non-committal answer and glanced at the door she hadn't opened since the night they kissed. He hadn't meant for it to happen. One second, they were standing in his kitchen, and the next, her lips were on his like she'd been waiting for the moment longer than she'd admit. And maybe he had too, but he hadn't expected her to vanish afterward. On Friday evening, Nolan came home late from work, his hands rough from a double shift at the mechanic's shop. Hallie was already drawing at the dining table, crayons scattered across the pages. She looked up and asked, "Did Wren move away?" He dropped his keys into the bowl near the door. "No, sweetheart, she's still here." "How come she doesn't come over anymore?" He crouched beside her chair, brushing her curls behind her ear. "Maybe she's just really busy. Grown-ups have a lot to handle sometimes." Hallie looked at him like she didn't buy it. He didn't either. Across the hall, Wren stood behind her door, forehead pressed to the wood, listening to the muffled sound of Hallie's voice. Her heart twisted in a way that felt unfair. She hadn't meant to disappear. But after the kiss, everything inside her had started to bend too fast, too deep. And now, with her legal team preparing to meet with her ex's lawyers, the timing couldn't be worse. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting Nolan, too. The next morning, a firm knock came on her door. She opened it, already knowing who she'd find. Nolan stood there, his shirt still damp from the rain, jaw tense. "You all right?" Wren opened her mouth, but he cut her off. "I haven't seen you in 3 days. Hallie thinks you moved out. I told her you didn't, but I don't know what to believe anymore." She stepped aside, letting him in. "I'm sorry. That's not an answer. I know." She folded her arms, trying to hold herself together. "I didn't mean to disappear. I needed to pull back." Because of the kiss, she hesitated, then nodded. He crossed the room slowly. "You think I regret it? I don't know what to think." "You have Hallie, you have your life, and I..." She swallowed. "I'm not who you think I am." Nolan's brows drew together. "What does that mean?" Before she could answer, a sharp knock came at her door. Wren's stomach dropped. "Don't answer that," she said quickly. But Nolan had already reached for the knob. Standing in the hallway was a man in an expensive trench coat, umbrella under his arm. His jaw tightened when he saw Nolan. "Wren," the man said smoothly. "I need a word." Nolan turned to her, waiting. Wren stepped forward, her voice low. "You shouldn't be here." He looked past her, eyes hard. "You're dodging the press, the board's furious." You've been hiding in a building with what is this, a handyman? Nolan's eyes didn't flinch, but Wren caught the flicker of something behind them. Nolan turned to her. Who is this? The man answered for her. I'm Mason, her ex-fiancé and COO of her company. Nolan's hands slowly curled into fists. He looked at Wren. Is that true? She didn't blink. Yes, all of it. Mason shook his head. You think staying here changes anything? You're still going to lose. The board knows you're unstable. You ran off in the middle of a crisis and they're ready to vote you out. Get out, Nolan said. Mason narrowed his eyes. Excuse me, you heard me. Leave. Mason gave Wren one last look. You have 48 hours before the meeting. Show up or don't. Either way, it's over. He turned and walked down the stairs without looking back. When the door clicked shut, Nolan was already moving toward the window, staring out into the rain. Wren stood in the middle of her apartment, feeling like the air had been vacuumed out of the room. I was going to tell you, she said softly. You're a CEO, he said, not turning around. Yes. And you've been pretending to be someone else this whole time. I wasn't pretending, she said. I just needed a place where no one knew who I was. He turned then, his stare unreadable. And now I'm supposed to just what? Keep playing house while you go back to your real life. This isn't pretend to me. But it was built on a lie. She stepped forward. Nolan, everything between us was real. You, Hallie. I didn't expect any of this. But you let it happen. I know, he shook his head. I don't care if you're rich. I care that you didn't trust me. She opened her mouth, but he was already at the door. I have to think, he said and left. The rain was heavier now. Wren stood alone in her apartment, the silence louder than it had ever been. That night, Nolan sat at the edge of his bed, watching Hallie sleep. He thought about Wren's face when she said it wasn't pretend. He thought about the man who'd looked at him like he was a stain she'd never be able to scrub away, and he hated that part of him agreed he'd been left before. Lied to. But this felt worse, because he'd started to believe in something again. The next morning, he dropped Hallie off at school and walked through the city, trying to clear his head. He ended up in front of a building he'd seen once on the news, glass and steel and power dripping from every corner. Lancaster and Co. He stared up at it. Somewhere in there, Wren was fighting for her company, and maybe for more than that. Inside the boardroom on the 32nd floor, Wren sat at the head of the table as Mason presented his case to the board. He was polished, smug, and speaking like the outcome was already decided. Miss Lancaster has been absent for over 2 weeks during a financial crisis. She withheld key updates from the board, ignored urgent calls, and abandoned her post. Wren stood slowly. I didn't abandon anything. I stepped away to make sure I wasn't making decisions from a place of anger. My CFO and fiancé stole from this company. I needed to gather evidence before I returned, and I have it. She handed a folder to the legal team. Bank transfers, shell accounts, all tied to Mason. Mason's face drained of color. The room buzzed. Wren's voice was steady. You want to vote me out? Fine. But do it knowing I was the only one protecting what we built. Silence. Then the board chair leaned forward. Motion to keep Miss Lancaster as acting CEO. Hands rose one after another. Wren didn't look at Mason. She didn't need to. Outside, Nolan waited near the building's lobby, unsure why he'd come. Maybe he'd wanted to see if she'd fight. Maybe he just wanted to see her. But when the elevator doors opened and Wren stepped out, her expression tired but unbroken, he realized something else. He missed her. She stopped when she saw him. I didn't think you'd come, she said. I didn't think I would either. She waited. I was angry, he said. I still am, but not because you lied, because you didn't think I could handle the truth. I was scared, she said. I've only ever had people love me for what I am, not who. He stepped closer. Then you should have known I'm not like them. She nodded, eyes glassy. I know that now. He hesitated, then pulled something from his pocket, a crayon drawing. She made this yesterday, he said. It's you, her, and me, at the park. Wren's hand trembled as she took it. She still wants you around, he said. So do I, her breath caught. He touched her cheek. But next time, no more secrets. She leaned into his hand. No more secrets. And for the first time in days, Nolan kissed her again. This time, she didn't disappear. 2 weeks later, Wren stood barefoot in Nolan's kitchen, her blazer draped over a chair, sleeves rolled up as she stirred pancake batter in a bowl that had seen better years. Hallie sat at the table, humming a tune under her breath while coloring a paper crown she insisted was for Wren to wear to Pancake Breakfast Kingdom. "More blueberries," Hallie said, pointing at the bowl like a judge issuing a decree. Wren laughed softly and obeyed, sprinkling in a handful. "Your wish is my command, Your Majesty." Nolan, leaning against the counter with his arms crossed, shook his head. "You've only known her a month and she's already got you wrapped around her finger." "She's very persuasive," Wren said, glancing over her shoulder. "And I'm weak for blueberries." Noted. Things had shifted since the day Nolan met her outside that boardroom, slowly, carefully, but undeniably. Wren didn't disappear again. She came over after work, sometimes stayed late enough to fall asleep on the couch while Hallie watched cartoons on her lap. She brought takeout from restaurants Nolan had never heard of and insisted on teaching Hallie how to fold dumplings from scratch, not that it stopped Hallie from stuffing hers with chocolate chips instead of vegetables. Still, Wren never invited them to her world, and Nolan never pushed. But on a windy Thursday afternoon, as Nolan walked Hallie home from school, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up beside them. The window lowered, revealing a woman in a sleek navy coat with sharp cheekbones and calculating eyes. "Nolan Drew?" she asked. He tightened his grip on Hallie's hand. "Yeah," she handed him a cream envelope. "You've been formally invited to the Lancaster Foundation's annual gala this Saturday. Miss Lancaster requested your attendance personally." The SUV pulled away before he could respond. Hallie squinted at the envelope. "What's a gala?" "I think it's like a really fancy party," he said, opening it. Inside was an invitation printed on ivory cardstock embossed in gold, the kind of thing you didn't just toss aside. Venue listed as the Sterling Atrium, formal attire required. And Wren's name in elegant script at the bottom. He didn't mention it to Wren that night, not when she showed up late with paint on her wrist and stories about a community center project her company had just funded. She looked tired, but happy, and he didn't want to add pressure. But 2 days later, Nolan stood in front of the tallest mirror in the apartment, adjusting the tie he hadn't worn since his brother's wedding. Hallie sat on the bed, watching with an exaggerated sigh. "You look like someone who owns a spaceship," she said. "That's not even close to what I was going for. You need a haircut." He checked the mirror again. "Thanks for the vote of confidence." Hallie tilted her head. "Are you nervous cause you're going to Wren's castle?" He hesitated. "A little." She slid off the bed and hugged his middle. "She likes you, even if you don't have a spaceship." He kissed the top of her head. "Thanks, kid." The Sterling Atrium gleamed like poured champagne. Sculpted glass walls curved around a central ballroom lit by crystal chandeliers and soft gold uplighting. The guests wore gowns that shimmered and tuxedos tailored within an inch of their lives. Nolan felt like a misplaced comma in a sentence too polished for him. Then he saw her. Wren stood near the entrance to the ballroom, her hair pinned up in a style that left her neck bare. Her gown was black, modern, and minimalist sharp lines, no embellishment, but somehow it made her look softer. She spotted him and smiled in a way that made the noise around them disappear. "You clean up well," she said as he approached. "You look like you own the stars," he replied, tugging at his collar. She handed him a glass of champagne. "Maybe just a couple." He didn't drink it. Instead, he looked around the room. "Why'd you invite me to this?" "I wanted you to see this part of my life. To know I wasn't trying to keep you out of it." He studied her. And I wanted to dance with you." Before he could respond, a man in a tuxedo interrupted, extending his hand to Wren. "Miss Lancaster, the mayor's waiting to meet you." She hesitated, then glanced at Nolan. "I'll be right back." He nodded, but as she walked away, Nolan noticed how many eyes followed her. Not with affection, but calculation. Like they were always measuring her worth in dollars and headlines. He wandered to the edge of the ballroom, drink untouched, and stood near a marble column. A man in his early 50s approached, silver hair, posture like a general. "You're the mechanic," he said without preamble. Nolan turned. "I'm Nolan. I know, I'm Wren's father." Nolan straightened slightly. Didn't realize she invited family. She didn't. The man studied him. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm here because I know how this ends." "Do you?" "I've watched her chase things that never last. Men who want her money, her name, her empire. She always runs, or they do." Nolan kept his voice even. "That's not me. You're not like them, I'll give you that." But you're still a complication she can't afford. She's not a transaction, Nolan said quietly. And I'm not leaving because someone in a suit thinks I should. Her father nodded once, then walked away. Nolan found Wren later near the balcony, her shoulders tense, champagne glass half full. Your dad, I saw, she said before he could finish. He likes to test people. Did I pass? 100%. He took her hand. Still want that dance, she nodded and led him to the center of the room. As they moved together, the music swelling around them, Wren leaned into him for the first time in public, unguarded. Her fingers laced with his, her forehead resting against his cheek. I've never brought anyone into this world before, she said. I've never been in it. How does it feel? He smiled faintly. Like walking on glass in work boots. She laughed against his shoulder. You're doing fine. Then let me ask you something. Ask anything. Do you want out of this world? She stiffened slightly. What do you mean? Do you ever want something simpler? Wren pulled back, searching his face. I don't want to escape it, she said. I want to build something real inside it, something that doesn't vanish when the cameras turn off. Then let me be part of that, her eyes shone. You already are. As the song ended, applause rose around them, but Nolan didn't hear it. Wren wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him in front of everyone, her world, her power, her name, and it didn't matter. She wasn't choosing between two lives. She was choosing him inside hers. Later that night, after the lights dimmed and guests filtered out to waiting cars, Wren stood at the top of the steps outside the atrium, heels dangling from her fingers, hair undone by the wind. Nolan wrapped his jacket around her shoulders. That was intense, she nodded. But worth it. They didn't say anything else. They didn't need to, because for the first time in a long time, they both knew exactly where they stood. Wren adjusted the strap of her tote bag as she stepped into the neighborhood cafe, the scent of espresso and warm pastry immediately grounding her. She wasn't here for coffee. She was here for him. Nolan stood behind the counter, wearing an apron she hadn't seen before, one hand expertly guiding steamed milk into a cup while chatting with the barista beside him. His profile was relaxed, lighter than she'd seen him in days. She waited until he looked up and noticed her. You're early, he said, setting the cup down and wiping his hands on a towel. I thought your meeting would run longer. They rescheduled, she replied, walking up to the counter. Something about the city council dragging their feet. Shocking. He motioned for her to follow him around the side. Want to sit in the back? She followed him into the small seating area tucked past the kitchen, where a few chairs and a mismatched table stood between shelves of storage containers and coffee bean sacks. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt like him, uncomplicated, functional, real. I didn't know you started working here, she said, settling into the chair closest to the window. Just mornings. The garage is slow during winter, so I figured I'd pick up some extra hours. He reached for a clean mug and poured her a coffee without asking. You hate espresso but love the smell, and you always add too much cream. She blinked. You remember that, he sat across from her. I remember more than that. Wren curled her fingers around the cup. Like what? You hum when you're trying to make a decision. You chew on your thumb when you're avoiding a hard truth, and when you're nervous, you overcorrect your posture like you're bracing for impact. She didn't reply at first. Then quietly, you see more than most people do. I don't want to miss anything with you. The words landed heavier than she expected. Things are different now, she said. After the gala, after everything came out. I'm being pulled in a dozen directions again. You're still showing up, he said. That counts for something. Wren looked down at her hands. I want to be here, but I'm also running a company that just barely survived a takeover attempt. I'm rebuilding trust with a board that sees me as a liability. And I'm trying to hold on to the only thing that's felt real in a very long time. He leaned forward. You don't have to prove anything to me. I know, but I want to. Her phone buzzed on the table. She silenced it without checking who it was. I've been thinking, she said, eyes on the table. About what you said at the gala, about building something real inside this world. He waited. I've been offered a spot on a development panel in DC, she continued. It's a lot of exposure. More press, more travel, but I'd rather focus on something closer to home. He studied her. You're turning it down, I'm redirecting it. She pulled out a folded proposal. I want to open a community tech center in this neighborhood, partner with schools, give kids access to resources. It won't make headlines, but it'll matter. He looked at the paper, then back at her. You already started this, didn't you? I started thinking about it the day I saw Hallie building a robot out of cereal boxes. Nolan's eyes softened. She's been asking if you can come to her school's winter showcase. I'd love to, just tell me when, he smiled, faint but full. You're really staying. I'm not going anywhere. Later that week, Wren arrived at the elementary school gym with a small bouquet of hand-tied carnations and a camera slung around her neck. She spotted Nolan near the back row of folding chairs, Hallie standing in front of him in glitter-covered sneakers and a paper star clipped to her braid. When Hallie saw Wren, she lit up and sprinted over. You came, she shouted, throwing her arms around Wren's waist. I wouldn't miss it. You have to sit next to Daddy. He saved you a seat and I'm in the second row so you'll see everything. Wren looked over and caught Nolan's eye. He smiled just enough for her to feel it in her chest. The lights dimmed and the kids began their performance, a chaotic, delightful mix of off-key songs and dramatic hand gestures. Hallie sang her heart out, waving to them between verses. Wren recorded every second. Afterward, Wren knelt beside Hallie backstage, handing her the flowers. These are for you, for being the brightest star tonight, Hallie beamed. They smell weird, but I love them. Nolan joined them, his hand brushing Wren's lower back. She leaned into the touch instinctively, letting it anchor her. Want to come back to our place after? He asked. We were going to make banana pancakes, Hallie's idea. I'd love to. That night, Wren sat on Nolan's couch, flower on her cheek and her legs curled under her, listening to Hallie chatter about her friends while Nolan flipped pancakes, failing to keep them evenly round. The kitchen was warm, the apartment smelled like vanilla and cinnamon, and none of it felt borrowed. After Hallie went to bed, Nolan brought Wren a cup of tea and joined her on the couch. He handed her a small envelope. What's this? She opened it to find a simple card. Inside was a drawing Hallie had made a house, 3 stick figures and a heart above them. She made that yesterday, he said. Said it was our family. Wren's chest tightened. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. She looked up at him. This is where I want to be. He reached for her hand. Then stay. I am. A month later, on a Sunday morning, Wren stood at the window of a renovated storefront 2 blocks from the apartment, watching as the new sign was installed. Lancaster Innovation Center. The space inside still smelled like fresh paint, but the computers were already lined up, the shelves stocked with supplies, and the first round of kids enrolled for after-school programs. Nolan joined her, holding 2 coffees. You did it. We did, she corrected, taking the cup. He looked around. You sure you want your name on this? It's not about the name, it's about what it means. She turned to him. I want to build something that lasts, not just this place, everything, he nodded. Then let's do it. Together. Wren reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Nolan blinked. Hold on, are you? No, she laughed, opening it to reveal a key. To my place. I figured it's time you had access to the good coffee. He stared at it, then grinned. I was about to say if you proposed before I did, Hallie would never let me live it down. She tilted her head. Are you planning to, eventually, when it feels right? Good. Because I'm not going anywhere, neither am I. That night, back in their apartment, Hallie sat between them on the couch, her head on Nolan's shoulder, her feet in Wren's lap. The TV played a movie none of them were really watching. Wren looked around the room, the scattered toys, the half-folded laundry, the mug of tea she'd forgotten about and felt something she hadn't in years. Steady, she glanced at Nolan. This is the real thing, isn't it? He didn't look away from the screen. Yeah, it is, and she believed him fully. Completely, because when a poor dad carried her bags up the stairs, she hadn't known it yet, but she was falling for the life she'd never realized she wanted. And now she was home. The first snow came earlier than expected. Wren stood at the window of Nolan's apartment, watching white flakes swirl under the streetlight. The city below looked almost serene for once, the usual bustle softened by the storm. Behind her, Hallie was asleep in a makeshift pillow fort, 1 sock off and a half-eaten candy cane still clutched in her hand. Nolan emerged from the kitchen with 2 mugs. You're going to catch frostbite standing there with your toes on the glass. She turned, accepting the cocoa. I couldn't sleep. Too much on your mind, she nodded. The tech center opens officially next week. I keep thinking something will go wrong. Let me guess. You forgot to install the fire alarms, the roof collapses, and all the kids suddenly forget how to use computers. A laugh escaped her. Exactly that. He leaned against the windowsill beside her. It's going to be fine. You've thought of everything, even backup chargers. You're more prepared than anyone I've ever met. She sipped the cocoa. You're not just saying that. I don't say things I don't mean. Wren looked at him, really looked at him. The quiet steadiness in his eyes, the way his presence grounded her no matter how chaotic everything else felt. She didn't know how she'd gone so long without him. I've been thinking, she said. About moving. Nolan's brow lifted. From here? No, not leaving. She set her mug down. Moving in with you if you're ready for that. His response was immediate. I've been waiting for you to say that for weeks. But there's more. She hesitated. I bought the building, he blinked. This one, she nodded. It came up for sale. I didn't want anyone else to tear it down and replace it with overpriced condos. It's not perfect, but it's home. He stared at her for a beat, then laughed once. You bought the whole building so you wouldn't have to leave me. I didn't say it like that. You didn't have to, she shrugged. I figured I'd renovate the units slowly, offer affordable rents to families like yours, like ours. He stepped closer, his voice lower. You're serious. I've never been more serious. He kissed her then, quiet, warm, certain. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. I never imagined this life for myself, she whispered. And now, he asked. Now I can't imagine anything else. 3 months later, the tech center buzzed with after-school chaos. Children crowded around 3D printers, coding stations, and circuits built into shoeboxes. Wren moved from group to group, helping, encouraging, beaming. She wore jeans and sneakers now, her hair in a braid down her back, and seemed more herself than she ever had in a boardroom. Nolan watched from the doorway, Hallie beside him with a backpack full of glitter glue and half a robot. She belongs here, he said, almost to himself. Hallie looked up at him. She belongs with us. Wren spotted them and crossed the room, her steps quick and light. You're early, she said, pulling off her lanyard. Hallie wanted to show you her progress. Hallie dug through her bag and pulled out a lumpy cardboard robot with button eyes and a light-up chest. I named it Pancake Bot. Wren clapped. That's perfect. She wants to enter it in the community showcase next weekend, Nolan added. She asked if you'd go with her. I wouldn't miss it. Hallie looked up between them. If you get married, will I be your flower girl? Wren froze. Nolan coughed. Where'd that come from? He asked. Hallie shrugged. Everyone in my class says people who kiss in kitchens get married. Wren laughed, face flushed. Is that the rule now? Hallie nodded seriously. It's in a book. Well, Wren said, crouching beside her, if we ever get married, you'll be the first person we tell. Okay. But I want to wear wings. Nolan met Wren's gaze over Hallie's head, something unspoken passing between them. Not fear, not hesitation. Just the quiet knowledge that they both wanted the same future. Spring crept in slowly, bringing with it blooming window boxes and kids riding bikes in the alley behind the building. Wren's renovations were underway, transforming the once crumbling apartments into bright, safe homes without losing their character. One afternoon, Nolan found her on the roof, a clipboard in hand, watching a team install solar panels. Did you ever think you'd be doing this? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. Not in a million years. You look good with blueprints, very intimidating, she grinned. I've been told. He pulled something from his pocket and held it out to her, a ring simple, elegant, a thin band with a sapphire set in the center. I know you didn't need a grand gesture, he said, but I wanted to give you something that felt like us. Her breath caught. I wasn't expecting, I didn't want to wait anymore. Wren stared at the ring, then at him. Yes, he blinked. I didn't ask yet. You didn't need to. Nolan slipped the ring onto her finger. Then it's official. She leaned into him. It already was. A year later, the building was unrecognizable in the best way. Fresh paint, new windows, a rooftop garden where residents gathered Sunday mornings for coffee and muffins. Hallie insisted on baking herself. The tech center had expanded to include a mentorship program. Kids from the neighborhood now referred to Wren as Miss W, and she wore that title like a crown. The wedding was small. Just close friends, neighbors, and a lot of children with sticky hands and big opinions. Wren wore a pale cream dress with a low back and flowers in her hair. Hallie wore her wings. They held the ceremony in the rooftop garden, under string lights and a pale gold sky. When it was Wren's turn to speak, she held Nolan's hands and said, "I didn't need saving, but I needed you. You saw me when I didn't know who I was anymore. You reminded me that love isn't about escaping, it's about building something worth staying for." Nolan's voice was steady. "I never thought I'd get to have a family again. And then you showed up with your fancy heels and guarded heart and turned everything upside down. You didn't just love me. You loved my daughter, and that means everything." They kissed as the crowd cheered, and Hallie threw confetti with dramatic flair. Afterward, Wren danced barefoot, her dress trailing behind her as she twirled with Hallie in the fading light. Nolan watched them, a quiet smile on his lips. He didn't need to say anything. This was his forever. Years passed, but the magic didn't fade, it just changed shape. Wren and Nolan ran the tech center together, expanding it to 3 more neighborhoods. Hallie grew into a fierce, brilliant teenager who built a drone in middle school and refused to wear dresses unless bribed. They traveled. They laughed. They argued sometimes, but they always came back to each other. One night after Hallie had gone to a sleepover and the city had gone quiet, Wren and Nolan sat on the roof again, wrapped in a blanket, sipping wine. "Did you ever imagine this?" she asked. He considered. "Not in the way it happened, but yeah." "I always hoped." She rested her head on his shoulder. "I love you more now than I did then. Then I must be doing something right." She smiled. "You're everything right." And in that moment under the stars, in the building they turned into a home, surrounded by the life they built from broken pieces they knew this was their always. No pretenses, no secrets, just love, real, lasting, and theirs.